a lot of people asking me for updates on what's going on, so it's easier to do a video than to send the same message 4,000 times. I don't have 4,000 people to talk to. I don't have 4 people to talk to. Anyway, I know that most people on YouTube only watch the first 30 seconds, so your time is almost up. So a quick update. I have stage 4 cancer. I'm going to die from it at some point, probably sooner rather than later. I had a massive operation, which was terrifying. My sister's a twat. So if you want to hear more about any of those things, keep watching. If not, you've got the gist of it. So, okay, so I'll go into like proper detail because I never really have, and yeah. So at the start of the year, I got coronavirus, and it was pretty bad, but it was worse than you would expect coronavirus to be. And it turns out it's because when you have coronavirus and cancer, which you're not aware of, it can have quite a bad effect on you. So yeah, combination of those two things, and it was also long COVID afterwards, which was fucking great. Yeah, that knocked me out for 6. Now, it was unfortunate that all this happened during the coronavirus period because it meant that it was harder to get diagnosed, obviously, because doctors weren't in their normal state. And from Googling, a lot of my symptoms from the cancer, they were the same as IBS. So when I was messaging my doctor, I said, "Oh, I think I've got IBS," blah blah blah, and they're like, "Yeah, it sounds that way," but turns out it wasn't. So uh, when I eventually managed to get a face-to-face appointment, it was with a new nurse, and she was immediately like, "Okay, boy, you need to get your ass to a hospital." So I did, and yeah, turns out that, well, kind of sucks. Uh, so pretty much the day I went into the hospital, they booked me in for the next day because they said how urgent it was, and and so what happened was I don't really know how to explain it. They they did all these tests, blah 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 blah, and then they said, okay, we've got to start chemotherapy for you as soon as possible. So they had to do a few operations first, which I'm not going to go into because it's gross. But if you know what you're talking about, you probably can figure it out. Which gave me 3 holes in my stomach, one of which is still there right now. And yeah, so that happened, which needed to happen before my operation. And then they had to do something called a PICC line, which is they put in your arm here, and that's what they put the chemotherapy into. So they put that in me and was all ready to start chemo. And that was 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks into my hospital stay, which would have been great if that had started working, because that means I would have started chemotherapy in April, maybe May, instead of 2 weeks ago. And we're at the end of September now. So that was all standard. It was unpleasant, but not as bad as I was expecting. And then I started feeling really, really unwell, and I couldn't figure it out. And it turns out that despite the fact that I'd done nothing but sit in a hospital bed for 2 weeks, the PICC line got infected, which had a side effect on me because obviously I was very unwell anyway, and so I had to have antibiotics on an IV line, which went into me for a month, and it was awful. It really was unpleasant, very painful, and just not nice. But we had that going. Eventually, it cleared up the infection, which was good. Never had an infection before. In fact, I'd never even been in the hospital as a patient before until this year, and that did the job. So I had a day where I was feeling really, really good. So I left the hospital, Finally came home after a month and a half. It felt really good to be back home, and it was actually probably one of the best days I've felt this year. Um, so that was all fine. And then actually I stayed at my sister's and her boyfriend's for a few days, but then came home. And then when my mother came down to look after me, no, that's wrong. No, sorry. Okay, so let me explain. When you have cancer, you get something called brain fog, which means you don't remember things properly, and your mind gets a little bit confused, and you're a little bit slower, less snappy. And normally, snappiness is all I've got. Without that, nothing, nothing in here. Yeah, it wasn't that. No, no, I came home and I fainted. So my sister and her boyfriend had to come around and look after me, which was very nice of them. And then I went back to theirs, and it was all good. And then my mother came over from France to keep an eye on me. And after a couple of days, I started having a really, really bad stomach ache. Whenever I ate, it really, really hurt a lot. Like the level of pain that I've never felt before. Hopefully, I'll never feel again. And obviously, I was like, okay, let's give this a little bit of time. Hopefully, it will subside and piss off. It's probably just because I've been in hospital so long, but it didn't subside and it didn't piss off. It just got worse and worse. And despite them being like, we need you to go to A&E, you got to go to A&E, I was like, nah, bullshit, I don't need to. And I woke up one morning and it was really bad. I was like, all right, I'm going to A&E. So I went back to the hospital that I'd already spent a month and a half at, and yeah, they looked at it. They were like, okay, your tumor, which is the size of a fist, by the way, this I've got a big fist. Let's not go into that. And they said your tumor has perforated, which means that it's kind of ripped, which is great. So that means all the gunk from the inside of the tumor is going all inside my body, all in my stomach. You don't want that, because you don't want cancer spreading even further through your body, poisoning you, shitting on you, spitting on you, puking on you, pissing on you, all those things, snotting, crying, all of the basically any kind of liquid coming out of your cancer into your body. You don't want more of that. And then that night, the first night I was in the hospital, for the first time in my life, I had the that thing where you get really hot and really cold and you're shaky and you can't think straight. 1 minute you're boiling and sweating, and the second you're freezing and your teeth are chattering. And I was like, shit, that I felt like I was going to die. Didn't know what was going on. It was horrible. And then I felt a little bit better over the next few days, but still like the level of pain that I didn't even know was possible. It was horrific. And so eventually they told me about the tumor perforated, and what happened is I had to go on another antibiotic course to get rid of that, which worked successfully, fortunately, because I don't think I think it was very, very close to it not working because there was so much. And then my doctor, who's amazing, came in and spoke to me. He said, look, because your tumor's done this, if you're on chemotherapy during this, you would be a goner. So it's kind of lucky that I hadn't started chemotherapy. So then what they had to do was they had to make a decision that it was too risky to put me on chemo, which is the thing that would save my life. So they couldn't do that. So they had to operate to remove the tumor, which is something that, because my tumor was so big, something that they don't normally do. I'm very fortunate that my surgeon is one of the best. He was absolutely amazing, and he took the chance to give it a go, because if he didn't do it, I'd die anyway. So what can you do? And amazingly, he did it. He got rid of the tumor that was in my bowel, which had also spread to my bladder. So not only did he get rid of that, he had to remove half my bladder. And then also there are something called METs, which is where the cancer is spread, which is in my liver as well. So It was in multiple places, and yeah, he got rid of it off the bladder and the main tumor out the bowel. Now that saying he got rid of it, he got rid of the big bit, but there's still going to be little parts that can grow back or cause trouble. But obviously that's they need to be targeted. But also the liver wasn't touched in that operation; it couldn't be. He did a few other things as well that I won't go into, but they were good to prepare for the future. And so he was absolutely amazing. I can't believe he did that. That was so good. And I recovered. Recovery period was another month and a half in hospital. Felt like freaking years, I swear to God. It just went on forever and it was like the worst pain ever. And I was like completely out of it. I can't remember conversations. People came to see me and I can't even remember seeing them. Crazy. Like, I don't know. I didn't even imagine someone that's normally pretty with it. Like, I'm not smart, but I'm pretty with it normally. And yeah, I just can't remember anything except just fucking unbelievable pain and misery. Horrible, horrible shit. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. I wouldn't even wish it on Donald Trump, and he's like one of the most evil people in the world. Then eventually, after about a month and a half, I got to come home. My mum stayed over from France, which was very, very nice, at great expense and stress to herself, because, you know, she couldn't work properly here. She has to look after me, which is very stressful. But it was nice to have her there when she could be. And she's still here now, by the way. And that was really, 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 really nice. But unfortunately, there was still a long recovery period. So we're talking months. And this is just months when I'm feeling really shit. Excuse me. I'll have a drink. This is the most I've talked since I streamed on Twitch in one long period. It hurts to drink. Sucks. A lot of things hurt a lot of normal things hurt when you have this shit. So that's really good to have her here. So just basically months of recovery. But at the end of the day, whatever they do, unless something completely out of the blue happens, like I get struck by a bus or a wild goat leaps out of a hedge and attacks me, this cancer is going to kill me. It's the thing I'm going to die from. So that sucks. Can't really do anything about it. But they're doing their best to try and delay it or whatever as long as possible. So I'm on palliative care, not curative, which is just what the NHS say with most cancer treatments, but I've been told anyway, so what can you do? The only real benefit is that I am now on chemotherapy, which is very unpleasant, but nothing compared to what it was like when I was staying in hospital. Like, if I hadn't had that, I'd be like, oh, chemo's terrible. Oh, I can't take it. I can't handle it. But no, after going through that in the hospital, this is quite easy to deal with. Is the wrong word, but it doesn't compare to that. So yeah, I've still got my mum looking after me, making like humongous sacrifices to herself. So I can't even, like, financially, mentally, I think, and like you can't. There's no way of being grateful enough for that, especially seeing as like I'm not a communicative person, as pretty much anyone that knows me in real life knows. Keep myself to myself more than I probably should. So it's really nice for her to come do that. I'll be forever grateful. Eventually I started to be able to walk a little bit. Like I could go out and walk for 5 minutes, which sounds pathetic, but is absolutely amazing for me because I hadn't, for example, been outside for so long. I got both my coronavirus jabs, obviously, with a little bit of natural antibodies as well. Hopefully the combination of those three things will keep me protected. But unfortunately, I'm in the situation now where if I get a cold, I could die from it. So I really don't want coronavirus again. Because when you're having chemo, it destroys your immune system, so you don't have anything. So even the simplest thing can be lethal. And yeah, so unfortunately, I do have to spend most of my time just in bed. As soon as I have an operation which is due in my chemotherapy break, hopefully, I'm fingers crossed that will make me a lot more agile and able to be myself. I'm looking forward to that. So hopefully, I can have a little bit more independence. Maybe let my mum have her life back a little bit. But that's that. So like, if anyone has any questions or anything, just let me know in comments. Blah blah blah. Whatever. I'll just be honest about it. I'm not. There's no point not being. Apart from what my mum's done, the only other thing is my girlfriend's been absolutely amazing. She's done it, in fact, for months beforehand when I thought that it was just a stitch, because I went swimming almost every day, and I was like, oh god, my stomach hurts, and she was like, you need to go to the doctor. I was like, nah, I'm a bloke. Nah, blokes don't go to doctors. What are you talking about? Crazy. No. You should have listened to her. She was right. So she's been absolutely stunning all through this. Like, I couldn't have dealt with it without her. So she's just the best. And then, other than that, the last thing I have to talk about is my sister and her boyfriend, who were really, really lovely to me. And then after I could see how stressed my mum was after looking after me for a month, every day, again, a great sacrifice to herself in a different country to where she's from, or to where she lives. And so I asked my sister if she could just take mum out for a lunch or something for a couple of hours to cheer her up. And she just ignored me, no response. And this is also my sister who didn't say anything when I had my operation, didn't say anything when I came home the second time, didn't say anything when I started chemotherapy, lied saying that no one told her about it, even though I've seen proof that multiple people have. But she's a little bit like that, so I just let that go. But eventually I messaged her boyfriend. I was like, can you please tell my selfish, greedy sister to just speak to my mum, because she really needs a break. And then he started sending me a shitload of abuse. And then she started sending me a shitload of abuse. Where's this come from? You two have always been really nice to me. They're sending me some horrible stuff. I'm like, whoa. Why choose now? When I'm literally at the lowest point of my life. And so they've just completely blanked me and stopped talking to me, which upset me a lot more than I expected to. I don't know why. Because, I spent 10 years looking after this girl. Like, sacrificed a fair amount to do that. But she has a massive victim complex. She's always the victim. She loves people feeling sorry for her. And she did that as well. She's like, oh, I was ill for a week. You don't understand. I'm like, yeah, I don't understand what it's like to be ill, do I? But anyway, I'm really upset about that, because basically I could die. Like, if I died in the next few weeks, I'll die knowing that she doesn't give a shit about me. And how can she be happy with that? How can you be happy with that? I don't know. It's a very, very good way to talk yourself out of someone's will, though, which they've done successfully. But that's probably the most disappointing thing about all of this. I can't understand, just because I asked her to go for lunch with her mum, and she came up with lies saying she's busy. She's busy until after Christmas. She doesn't have 2 hours free until after Christmas. Still do shit little videos where they walk around Primark buying children's toys for themselves. But can't spend 2 hours to see the woman that raised her. Anyway, enough of that. You get the idea. I'm on chemotherapy now. I've just had my second session. Instead of having another PICC line, because the last one got infected, they actually couldn't put another one in because my veins are so fucked after months of having cannulas put in every single day, multiple times. So I had this thing here, which is called a PICC line. No, sorry, it's called a portacath. So when they put the chemo in, it goes straight into the vein here, which goes near my heart. Sorry, I'm not used to talking this much. Which is much easier to deal with and much more subtle, which is nice. You don't have wires hanging out of you as much, etc. But it's not gonna stop. It's not gonna stop the cancer. It's not gonna get rid of it. There's not really much else I can say about that. Just have to accept it. So that's that, really. Don't really want to waste any more of your time. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, just let me know. I'm happy to be open about things. And yeah, see you on the other side. Oh, and of course,